This is our Buckaroo Banzai panel, and I know a lot of folks are in the screening, which had a little bit of technical difficulty, so it's running a little late. But wanted to go ahead and get started on time because, you know, we have a motorcycle convention rolling in here pretty soon. Okay, it's an inside joke from the movie. so you haven't seen the movie yet, right?
No.
So I hate to say this because there's probably going to be some spoilers in here. So.
I'll forget them as soon as I walk out of the room.
Okay. So welcome, and I'm excited to be here, excited to have you here. I've got a whole host of things that I can talk about, but I really do want to be open to any questions or thoughts that folks might have. Because it's Monsterama, I thought that we probably want to talk a little bit about the monsters that are in Buckaroo Banzai. They are some fairly unique designs, I think. When you initially look at them, maybe not, but there was a lot that went on behind the scenes in creating the lectroids that appear inside of Buckaroo Banzai. Welcome. So origins a little bit about Buckaroo Banzai. So what I kind of want to share a little bit is just what's some of the background of Buckaroo, and then we'll talk about some of the influences like the electroid aliens and evil from the 8th dimension. For certain, the ultimate evil if you read the novelization. And then we'll talk about a little bit about how they marketed the movie and share some of the examples of that and some of the just various bits and pieces that I find very fascinating. And I'll just throw this out there. Does anyone, you're probably some more bonsai experts out there. Anyone know what the core kind of influence that W.D. Richter points to, Buckaroo Banzai, an old cereal from the 1930s?
Buck Routers?
Is that actually Phantom Empire, which starred Gene Autry. So if you've seen Phantom Empire, Gene Autry was the singing cowboy, and W.D. Richter says, hey, Gene Autry was that archetype, the original archetype for the singing cowboy that becomes Buckaroo Banzai, coming into the 80s where he has a rock band with the Hong Kong Cavaliers. But not only the character of Gene Autry, who plays Gene Autry in the movie, if you've not, I don't know if folks have seen that serial, it's just mind-blowing to me and to watch it, because Gene Autry plays himself in the serial. It's a 13-part serial. He has a band, and he plays this band at the ranch. They have a ranch there, and part of the contract for the ranch is that he has to play every day on the radio. So he has a radio program, and Gene Autry, things will happen, like he gets in these precarious positions and stuff. He's got to get back to the ranch to make the broadcast, or they're going to lose the ranch, make this for his band to play. So in the meantime, they discover this Phantom Empire 5 miles below the surface of the earth of this ancient kingdom. Okay, and they have robots, they have ray guns, they have spaceships, and they're considering, coming up from underneath and invading the earth. So, a lot of pieces going on there, just a strange mix of Western and science fiction and all these bizarre elements. The robots have cowboy hats, like style on their top of their head and things. So if you ever get a chance to see it, it is really rich. But then you go into Buckaroo Banzai, and here's the singing cowboy who originally took his inspiration, Earl McRoush, had a character named Buckaroo Bandy from Texas. Earl McRoush is from Texas, and he wrote about this guy who has all these adventures. And W.D. Richter's like, hey, I really like this. Let's try to put together a real story, put it into a screenplay that we could, try to sell. And so it morphed from a wandering minstrel who was Buckaroo Bandy to this scientist, race car driver, rock star, comic book, all of these things that's Buckaroo Banzai. And then they began to pitch that story, and literally both the producer, the director, and the writer said, "We cannot believe they actually bought this to make." It's because it's so crazy, it's so wacky. There's so many crazy aspects to it. But they did, and they gave just a huge effort into making the movie. And so we have these creatures, the electroids from Planet 10, and I have a few design, some of the original design work, art, and stuff, things like that. It does show up in my book. I'm not going to sit here and plug my book, but some of these do show up. So this is the electroid original design, and you may remember that they shoot these poison stingers out of their mouth. So they apparently lays right down the gullet of their throat, and they can shoot them. And for the first time, it's revealed how that works, how the physics works. As it comes flying out, it does the somersault thing, and then it hits you like an arrow or something, and they're poisoned. And as we know, the comrade Rawhide was hit by one of these and killed, as well as Sam, the mechanic, in the garage defending the jet car. So very poisonous, very deadly. There are a lot of fan theories about how they came up with a cure. They put them on ice and then came up with a cure, and maybe Rawhide is still alive. Maybe we're going to find out next month, because the official sequel to Buckaroo Banzai is coming out in novel. Against the World Crime League, that's the release date Amazon's currently showing. Earl McRausch has written 600 some pages sequel. It's been delayed a few times, but right now it's showing it's coming out soon. So we'll find out if Rawhide and Sam actually may have survived. This is a shot of some of the makeup that went in by Tom Berman. He did just an incredible amount of work on creating these masks that both look like the real star. Here comes our other panelist now, Ted Haycraft.
Sorry, everybody. Film great. That's the technical difficulties for the throw-out film.
No problem. It's good to see you. So, welcome in. You can sit right here. They got you on camera.
Oh,
So this is Ted Haycraft. You can introduce yourself real quick.
some state city he is from, Evansville, Indiana. Film critic, and I wrote for the written movie reviews. Been a critic of some sort since high school and college and various places. Working at a TV station, and 1984.
Yeah, that's the year.
Terre Haute, Indiana. Somehow, I didn't think the film was going to come to Evansville, and so Fred and I went about 2 hours away on our time to go see it.
Yeah.
I had no idea. We're trying to figure out how I found out about it. I don't know why. Smaller city, and the film finally came here, and then Dwayne saw it when he got here in Evansville. But that's sort of it. And I thought I was the biggest Buckaroo Banzai fan. This guy right here. So
there's a lot of fans.
I bow to him.
They just bounce out. Like several people came up to the table like, oh, yeah, this is my favorite. Multiple people pulled out their headbands, hey, we got these in the Atlanta Fantasy Fair back in 1984 itself, and so it is very interesting.
And I guess you want to explain, we could talk Buckaroo Banzai, all kinds of aspects, but you got to kind of gear toward the
Yes.
monster creature aspect of it.
Yeah, well, so I did a little bit of introduction about Phantom Empire, Autry, original inspirations for Buckaroo Banzai. Not only story, but also just kind of the flow of how, that by intention, they want the movie to feel like you were dropped right in the middle of a serial of 13 parts, and you're in the middle of it. You get this piece of the story, and you figure it out. Okay, we're not going to explain this stuff to you. You're smart. You're an audience. If you're not smart, you probably won't like this. But if you really want to try and work on it, you can figure out the things going on. And then we start in with Lectroids. Right. Lectroids, the ultimate evil in the 8th dimension. So a couple of things. I've got this great casting of a silicone mask here. As the story is told, when they were coming up with the design, the idea for the aliens, that someone picked up a lobster that was on the table and said, hey, what if we just stick, add an alien with a lobster-looking thing that comes back across the forehead? And they said, hey, that's a great idea. And so the idea is almost like this is the tail, and you can see the ridge back. But they're trying to create something different, something unique. At that point in time, a lot of special effects had a huge influence on trying to outdo each other and create, more different types of things. And so here's one of the masks. You can see it here, Ted, but that Tom Berman did. He created these just incredibly detailed masks, very articulated. They're kind of customized to the characters. So the one for Christopher Lloyd looks somewhat like Christopher Lloyd. The one for Vincent Schiavelli, because he's kind of got a very distinctive face, looks like him, but in an alien version. Unfortunately, what happened is it became very expensive to apply all the complex makeup. So they did like 3 or 4 of these really, really nice ones, and then they ran out of money, and they have a whole lot of them that are just about like this. You just slip it over your head. So when you watch the movie, you can look for the masks that are really articulated, and you see a lot of movement going on, and then more of the background folks that just kind of have a mask over their head.
Sort of with the age movies, when they, if you look close to the age movie, you can see the ape outfits are not as detailed as the main apes. And the Bourbons worked on that too.
I think so, yes. Yeah. And Tom, if you want to read more about this, and I'll plug this a few times, Tom Berman did it. There's an extensive interview in Enterprise Incidents. It's a magazine about that time. It's mostly Star Trek, but there's about a 10-page pictorial where it's just him talking about how he designed these and made them. It is a fantastic article. Only place you can see that in there around. You can see how complex they made it. They wanted this bizarre thing with the teeth, where they're all packed in, that allows we looked at how the thing shoots out and flips around there in order to create something interesting. And we'll see some of the actual pictures here in a second. Kind of picking up on that sea life form, this is what they call the father ship, because they didn't want to call it the mother ship, because that had already been done a whole bunch of times, so they refer to it as the father ship. It looks like a giant seashell or conch or something. And again, they're working to try to create something unique, which was an organic design to all the ships, so that the idea is they look like, kind of like they were built out of, grown out of coral, or like a sea life or sea form would be coming into play.
I always thought, what did you guys think of the ship when it showed up? I remember thinking, this is really strange. But I think as I've grown to watch it and appreciate it and thought about it more, I like the idea they were going some way off the track here. This is not the Enterprise. This is not a starfighter. This is, we're going to come up and do something, really unique. And that's, again, adds the charm to this film, I believe.
Yeah. And they do a few homages to 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's so many things you can watch and pick up. So there's this, while they're on the ship, the aliens, you see one of the aliens walking this direction while they're going this direction, has a tray like the stewardess in 2001: A Space Odyssey on the ship. Again, it's just like a flash little thing, but they were making a nod to this notion of people moving in different directions due to space.
Yeah, I guess lack of a better word, Easter egg. This thing is just wall-to-wall Easter eggs, and you can just sit there and watch it and keep on making notes on it.
Yeah. Here's a shot of Christopher Lloyd as John Big Boutte himself.
That's right.
Big Boutte. And he's actually getting ready to shoot. They've got him with the thing sticking right in his mouth to spit this out. And interestingly, I give a huge amount of credit to the enduringness of Buckaroo Banzai to Bruce McBroom, who was the set photographer. And I did get a chance to interview him, and he just talked about how it was one of the most, exciting projects he ever worked on, and he's done an enormous amount. He's a hugely successful photographer. And I throw this out, he actually, Vera Fawcett in the red bikini, he shot that image. Bo Derek on the beach with the dreadlocks, again, in the 70s, he shot that. He did an enormous amount. Clint Eastwood, he shot the Line of Fire.
Oh.
He did that whole thing. Nick Nolte, where he was the photographer, he worked very closely on.
In the Line of Fire. Fires. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but he said when
Under
he,
Fire.
Under Fire, yes.
Yeah, Under Fire.
And but he said there were so many fantastic sets, costumes, props, things on this film. He said, I just had a field day, And I was taking one thing, and then the actors, because you have this incredible cast, they're all just hamming it up. They really were excited. They wanted to be there, and they wanted to be in character. And so you get some of these behind the scenes or why he's shooting. Now, he does actually shoot the thing out, but they stop and take a still photo of it right sitting there, it looked like a slug was on his lips or something. That's on one of the postcards. They did do a postcard set at the time of the release, and that's one of those images that shows up in the postcards.
Yeah, I was going to say everybody's into character. I was watching the behind the scenes not too long ago on the Blu-ray, and I think Lithgow says that he ad-libbed that slap to Christian Lloyd. It was totally ad-libbed, and it knocked him down when he was talking. And near the end, I was watching it again. It totally caught off Lloyd and caught him off.
Yeah.
Guard. So they were really into character. I think the finger. I think he flipped the fingers. Was an ad-lib.
That was an ad-lib.
Yeah, too. Yeah. So they were really into it, because that wasn't in the script.
Yeah, interestingly, when you kind of read through the script, and great thing is, if you go online, I was telling someone earlier, the Buckaroo Banzai FAQ, it is a site that's been around. Sean Murphy runs that. It's been around since the late 90s, and he just dumps anything and everything he can find on there. And it is pages and pages and pages. There's copies of script, there's copies of early versions, all the World Watch One newsletters, just a huge database of stuff. And so if you read through some of those scripts, or even the last script, it's very clear that, a third to half of the stuff you see was never scripted. And he wanted it that way. And in interviews, Peter Weller, multiple times, this was the most fun project I've ever worked on in my life, because I just embraced the character, and I, was able to just, bring this stuff out. Jeff Goldblum, this cowboy named New Jersey, how do you get this iconic idea, New Jersey cowboy, into one character, and then how he brings it across, you couldn't have made it up. Only, I think, Jeff Goldblum could have imbued it with the characteristics that you see with him there.
What amazes me, like we said, we're talking about the ad-libbing, and they had so much fun. But Ermac Rausch and W.D. Richter, they're presenting this to these actors, and a lot of them would say, I don't know what, I don't understand this, but it is amazing. It was like a really weird thing, but the script was strong enough, had a strong enough foundation that they were able to say, there's something here I want to do. And Richter was a good talker and an enthusiast about it. And so you got to have that strong foundation, and then able to riff and ad-lib off of it. If it's not, it's there in the screenplay, then you're going to have trouble. But that's what is so amazing. Rausch and Richter really had an interesting foundation to work from and take it from there.
Yeah, and I think because it's such a dichotomy of, it's a story you can't hardly explain, but yet it's so solid. The movie works, it completely works for itself. When you watch it, you can get everything from the movie of what's going on, but you can't explain it. You just kind of have to experience it. Like, here it is, and wow, there's all these different things.
And it makes sense if you watch it enough. It's all there. There's no
Continuity.
errors in there. Trust me.
Yeah.
If you watch it many times.
Well, and so one of the aspects, and I know if you haven't seen it, so the Lectroids.
Has anyone have not seen it?
No.
Look at this one person. Okay. So
It's okay. But the Electroids, that's how they appear. That's how they actually look, but they don't appear that way to regular people. They look like humans because they give off a bacteria that swims up to your nose, brainwashes you, and causes you to see them as something else. When you go through the film and watch very, very closely, as I'm sure many of you have, they carry this continuity. They are so concise that, like, when this person's like looking, you see them as the human, and then someone over here who has the alternate view, when they look, they see them as the alien. The camera like shifts back and forth, which may have created some confusion for the audience because you're not exactly clear why is it shifting like that until you get what the joke is or what it is that's actually being portrayed. But the continuity is dead on. It works relative to the characters. And so, for example, when Buckaroo first is revealed, he gets his gift from the goddess of the sight to be able to see the Lectroids as they are. He runs into the room and he's like, there they are, evil, pure and simple. The camera like pans right to him. You see these crazy aliens. Then you see everybody's reaction like, what in the world's going on? Because they don't look like aliens to them. And they're standing there as humans. So you're packing, going back.
it gets really complicated in the compound.
Yeah.
But they keep it straight if you watch closely.
Very tight, and I'll say this, the director, W.D. Richter, this is his first film directing, but he had a very strong career as a writer, and so that's why I believe the story is just so tight. He did a great job on the reenacted Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Jeff Goldblum, Dracula with Frank Langella, Big Trouble in Little China, Brubaker, he wrote that. Several of these, and again, the story just very, very well done. Here's a few more shots of some of the aliens showing off, posing in different things. Let's see if that's on your right side. You see like this kind of hodgepodge of different things going on there. Aliens inside the factories. The set costumer said he had just a field day because they dressed them as horribly dressed Russian businessmen. So it's supposed to be these really tacky, horrible outfits, mismatched ties and shirts and whatnot.
Is that John Yaya or the small berries?
I think small berries. Not small berries. Here's some, one of those unique. This is on the postcard.
Wow.
Actually, each of these was where you really get some good shots of them. If you may know this, but the Electroids are the reason they are some of the most evil creatures in the universe is that they have taken the oath of the flying fish from this from Planet 10, and they're bloodthirsty, evil, massive warriors. They come to the Earth, and after 80 or 50 years, they've softened because they have learned to like sweets and some of the luxury things that are available on Earth.
Screaming Yellow Zonkers.
Screaming Yellow Zonkers. You see Fiddle Faddle. They have a box of Fiddle Faddle in one.
Twinkies.
And Twinkies. Again, those little subtle things when they send him a care package from his friends at Yo-Yo Dine. John Worfen, who's in the insane asylum, he picks up the Twinkie. He's like, he tosses it, and it's because they've become addicted to these things. He has not. He's kind of, as the leader, he's kind of remained pure. He's not like absorbed with it. But these types of things are always kind of going on behind the scenes. The postcard actually explains to you who each of the one that showed all of the different Lectroids, you know, which ones they are, what they were doing. It's kind of a neat little tidbit there. Another little image. This is
Viewfinder?
that is a viewfinder. So they released the
Viewmaster reel.
Viewmaster reels. So Buckaroo Banzai, one of the few merchandising things that was done was Viewmaster reels. And interestingly enough, one of the props in the movie, the spectroscopic analyzer, was a talking Viewmaster. They took it, they spray painted it black, they put some lights on it.
Right before they go to the concert, or
Yeah.
the green room. If you remember that little mechanism that Buckaroo has?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a little later, it shows up again on the bus. It shows up a few times, but this scene, or this shot, bizarrely, is on the Viewmaster reel, and it shows John Parker sitting there looking at a Viewmaster that was repurposed into this alternative thing. So, yeah, that's in the book.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So you got to really
Yeah,
go through these pieces.
And just this is a very trivial aside, but the night we saw it in Terre Haute, 2 hours away out of our town to see it, we go to Kmart to kill time, and the Viewmaster reels were in Kmart that night. We were like, yes. I mean, we thought, we're going to find more, but he found more than I ever did. But anyway, that was just a really cool night that I was able to find those that night. So that's, like I said, a very personal trip.
Well, that's just a bizarre merchandising.
Well,
for me, it's just like
if you look
really
at the
odd.
book, if you look at the book, there's the jet car toy he found. I don't know where you found this on you haven't seen the movie yet, have you? Or no, that's the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I bought the novel before, but then on mail order, they had some mail order where you could buy these little toys. Jet car toys, and I bought a dozen.
Oh, okay. I thought you had to go across. But anyway, we're getting off track here. Go ahead.
Which is easy to do. So, a couple more shots. These are the black Lectroids. So you have red Lectroids, black Lectroids. Again, some of the interesting designs associated with that. Here's kind of a behind-the-scenes shot I just picked up online. And a couple of last-minute things here. They did a lot of storyboard work ahead of time, and I want to talk a little bit about the 8th dimension shots. But you can find these again on the World Watch 1 site, the Buckaroo Banzai FAQ, but this was some of the promotional. So they created these event horizons where Buckaroo Banzai goes into the 8th dimension. And it's amazing how they kind of brought those over when they actually did the filming. They tried to do something that had never been done before, and they actually created a camera. Again, this is echoing a little bit of 2001: A Space Odyssey, the kind of that final shot where they did the acid trip and the paint spreads. But they were able to take the newest technology for electron microscopes, and they put motion onto the camera, which had never been done before. So they take a camera and they blow up, various items, one of which was a cow tongue, and then they, at the microscopic level, they tracked across the surface of these things, and that's where the imagery comes from that you see inside of the 8th dimension. Almost 6 months of work. All right, so all this stuff. And you want to read about that? Cinefex. Issue number 19, which is purely a cinema, really focuses on the technical aspects, but it's got, I don't know, it's probably 15, 20 page article that goes through how they did this. It's the only place I've ever read that, but it's very fascinating because it's hard to appreciate it because it ends up as like 14 seconds in the movie, right? And it's over, But they enormous amount of detail trying to get something that was unique that had never been done before, and that was the point. Studios saw the scenes and they said, well, shouldn't there be some aliens or something more interesting? As if what was on screen wasn't interesting enough. The studio executive, we won't, David Beagleman in particular, said, I want to see a monster or something in there. Something needs to show up. So they actually went back afterwards and made a stop motion photography version of the Electroid. So that's not a person, it's a stop motion little model, and they make him, doing this number as he flops around in there, which I don't know. I'm hearing a disgusted sigh.
No. You brought up the big producer.
But
yeah, I mean, one reason we don't have a sequel, and we've had all this mess and things like that. It's a long,
arduous struggle.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because again, there's one of those levels of detail that maybe Richter wasn't necessarily thinking about. But we get this little full body nude of the nude of a Electroid, kind of coming at the.
Did we see more than one? I thought we saw.
I thought it was only one, but
okay.
There's some other things going on
Yeah,
there. But so they dropped that in.
I mean, what a producer does, a producer likes to think that he's creative, and some producers are creative. And actually, we have a couple of things that we love about that film that's due to him, even though he kind of sabotaged the whole thing afterwards. But.
You just gonna drop that bomb?
No, I'm sorry.
No,
No,
go ahead.
Well, you know which one, right? The March.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Sure.
Oh well, I mean.
So I don't know. Let's back up.
Yeah, I didn't know if you're going to get there or not. But okay, go ahead.
No.
He's going to follow the outline here. So.
No, it's not on the outline. You're departing completely from script.
I'm ad-libbing.
Well, I just want to make, so I think what folks probably know, David Beagleman was the producer for the film.
I thought he had an Indiana Jones.
That's what he sold investors on, is this is going to be a huge franchise. It's going to be the next, ongoing series of adventures. And when he started seeing the dailies from it, he's just like, what is this? What are you guys doing? This is not Indiana Jones. There's a
What did Unsworth leave?
one of the most,
What did Unsworth leave? Was it because of that too? The dailies?
Cronenworth.
Cronenworth, I'm sorry.
So Jordan. So initially, the film was being shot. Cinematography was by Jordan Cronenworth, who did Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
Okay, this guy is just coming right off Blade Runner.
Amazing cinematographer.
Yeah, and he actually did shoot the bar scene. So if you watch.
Color scheme,
the bunkhouse scene at the beginning, but the bar scene has, the colors, the lighting, the ambiance, all these things. The spittle that comes off when she's taking the drink of Bat 69. I mean, to me, just like so beautiful. But apparently, Beagleman's like, man, no, this is not going to work. He didn't even tell Richter, the director. He fired Cronenworth and hired Fred Conan Camp, which they're very similar. Who's a stunning photographer.
Too, yeah.
He did Patton. He did The Right Stuff. He had just come off of Right Stuff, and you actually see some of the influences of those. But he's a very clean. He wants a standard wide. And here's the shot. There's not any of this artsy stuff going on.
So anyway, that's examples of what Beagleman would do. So go ahead.
I just want to make sure everyone kind of. So Beagleman, there was constantly a fight.
And you see the dailies, and he's wanting this, but he still, what makes me think he still had some hope in the film.
Sure.
Because he sees the film, he goes, "There's something I want to." The ending, it's still lacking something to just like get everybody. He didn't like the ending of just Pity and Buckaroo kissing, and the alien going, "So big deal, so what." He goes, let's get them all back together and do this march.
Yeah.
And so to me, that is just one of the most amazing cinematic pieces of history is the Buckaroo Banzai march at the end. I mean, even Wes Anderson lifts from it in Life Aquatic. He does that at the end with Bill Murray and everybody. And it was because of Beagleman. So I can't, you can't discount him, or you can. I mean, but it's a frustrating. Situation because I was wanting to see that sequel where he fights the crime lead. So anyway,
maybe someday.
Yeah, someday.
I think ultimately Beagleman was the person who got the money. Yeah. So it would have never been made without him to begin with. So he did secure the funding for Buckaroo Banzai, even if he sold it in a lot of ways that maybe it wasn't going to be He did battle with Richter throughout. Later, very shortly thereafter, we find out in real life, Beagleman is a crook. He was embezzling money. He'd been stealing money from the studios. He spent time in prison, and it kind of had a tragic end. So there's another part of the evil of working inside of Buckaroo Banzai.
But yeah, and as you guys have read, I'm sure you read a lot of definitely Hollywood history. Some of these studios and producers and people, they take it very personally. And so he kind of he was so mad it didn't make money, it didn't do well. He wouldn't let it go to anybody else. So there were people offering to do stuff. And I think at one point it was Dark Horse Comics wanted to have Jeff Darrow to do a Buckaroo Banzai comic and get Jeff Darrow to draw it. If you guys know who Jeff Darrow is, it would have just been amazing, a perfect match for the Buckaroo Banzai. But that was kind of thing was holding up. And and even now, it's still all messed up when Kevin Smith wanted to do one.
Yeah.
And I guess you saw the headlines, and that got shut down again. So anyway.
Well, and I think interestingly, it shows up over and over by very creative people who want to do something with this. Ernie Klein, for example, with Ready Player One.
Ever see that movie, Ready Player One? Ever see that?
Or read the book.
Did you catch the Buckaroo Banzai? It's very
hard to miss it.
It's hard, but you had to know Buckaroo Banzai.
Yeah.
Because I know there's a lot of people in that audience I saw with, they had no clue, the outfit.
So if you read the book, even before the movie.
Oh, there's more in the book, isn't there?
Yeah, there's several references. He has the oscillation over thruster in his car. But when I read the book, because I read it, a few months before the movie, I said, there's no way in hell they're going to have him dressed like Buckaroo Banzai. No freaking way, because nobody will know who that is. There's no way they're going to do that.
I was impressed.
And then it came on screen, I'm just like, hats off, And he even dresses in the poster outfit, which
that's another story.
With all that in a minute. Do you want to do the last Beagleman with the red glasses?
Oh yeah, go ahead. You do the red glasses.
Does everybody know red glasses story? Or I don't want to reiterate the red glasses story. So Buckaroo Banzai has a pair of red glasses that he wears, right? They're really hip and stylish at the time. It is, kind of probably still is. So the first time he put them on, David Beagleman sees the dailies. So this is what you filmed today in the evening. He's like looking at what you filmed, and he calls them all in. He's like, "What in the hell are you doing? What is going on? You cannot put the hero in glasses. Heroes don't wear glasses, okay?" And this became, unless it's, I guess, Clark Kent, and it's part of a disguise or something, right? But so this became a debate, an ongoing. And they said, no, that he's a scientist, he's doing this is an important thing, and he agreed. And he said, okay, but you can't do this more than 3 times, okay? 3 times only. You can only show him with these glasses on 3 times, or I'm going to shut the film down. Okay, that's what he told Richter. I will shut this film down. So they shot another scene. They shoot the 3rd scene. He calls him up, get in here, I'm shutting this movie down because I said it's only twice. You can only show it 2 times. No, you said 3. No, it's twice. Neil Canton, the other producer, had to weigh in and say, no, I was there at the meeting too, and you said you could show it 3 times. And I guess he relented and said, okay, but that's it. I don't want to see those red glasses ever again. So, that's the type of thing that was going on. And now you look back and you think, what? How does anyone sit and think, oh, well, this becomes, he's not heroic if he's wearing a pair of glasses.
That's going to hurt the box office.
Yeah, he's going to hurt the box office if he does that. So, one of many travails associated with the film. So here's an Easter egg. You may have seen it. This is a really nice shot. This is hanging up in Lizardo's room there at the asylum. It's an organizational chart for all of the people. Obviously, he's at the top, and everyone else is somewhere down below, which is always a great one, when you're working in the business world. You do get to see some interesting pieces of, the different masks, aliens, although some of them look similar to each other. And, you know, here's another one of those shots of kind of the whole crew, the Hong Kong Cavaliers, where they just shot a lot of images playing around on set. So they have this weird backdrop, throw some smoke in there. Peter Weller's hair, I think this was pretty early on because his hair is a lot, styled a little different, and especially Clancy Brown back in the back.
Yeah.
Not Clancy Brown.
Clancy. You're right.
Yeah.
Right. He looks at that. It just looks like he's in the back too because he doesn't have his outfit. Looks like that.
Yeah, and his hair is quite good.
Right.
Billy Vera as Pinky, hugely successful musician. He was running one of the only kind of unique sounding bands at that point in time in LA, so they were very cutting edge. They had a lot brass on it, kind of a blues jazz type of sound to it. But he'd been around, you know, again, all of these folks have like huge credentials. But he'd been a very successful singer-songwriter in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Went on to have #1 hit, won the Grammys.
What's the name of the song? What do
At This Moment.
Yeah. You would know the song if you heard it. It was a huge hit. But you know, I did a film series and I showed Buckaroo Banzai. When I went to the IMBD and I went through all the main actors and I did their what they did before Buckaroo Banzai and what they did after Buckaroo Banzai. It's amazing. I mean, all those small. I guess you recognize. I always forget his name. The Breaking Bad.
Jonathan Banks.
Jonathan Banks has got a small part of there. Now he's huge, but you know this is way early. You know back, and then some of them are on a little bit on the tail end of their career. But it's just really amazing. If you really examine that cast, it's like an Easter egg cast.
Yeah.
In a way. So.
Yeah. So just talking. Excuse me. Moving on a little bit about how they then worked to market the movie. As Buckaroo Banzai came to completion, so they did the filming, there were all these struggles and battles on the set. Well, what are we going to do with this? What's going on here? This isn't the movie I thought we were making. But for Richter, it was definitely the movie they were planning to make. This is the movie, I mean, because he's having a field day. 20th Century Fox said, well, we're going to take this movie and we're going to do the marketing for it, okay? And so independent of him, they began to create a marketing campaign, and one of the struggles that shows up repeatedly in interviews is it's almost impossible to describe this movie. So how do you market a movie that you can't hardly describe? And so in the U.S., we'll go through some of these, and go in a lot more detail. In the U.S., they came up with this poster campaign. It's fairly iconic. I know when it came out, I didn't like it. Since then, I've really grown to where I do enjoy it. But when the director, Richter, saw this, he said, there is no image that is less like the movie than what this image is, okay? He hated the marketing campaign. Neil Canton, I mean, they're on multiple interviews where they talk about it. You have the organic ship designs are replaced by this thing, which is a cool design. It definitely looks like it comes out of Blade Runner. And I've got the little Mattel Blade Runner cars, little matchbox. And like Rick Deckard's car looks exactly like this. You can turn it sideways. They put him in this kind of a casual business suit with his big pink tie.
Dare I say yuppie?
Pre-yuppie. Yeah. Proto. He's probably a proto.
Yeah, I know when the yuppies.
Proto yuppie. He's got a Team Banzai pin, and he's looking at the at the camera, the audience, that type of thing. And so you look at that, and you think, is he ever dressed like that? No, not really. He has a suit at times, but he has a bow tie. Most of the time he's in a variety of other outfits and those types of things. So it's very much distinctive in terms of not really coming from the movie. Aliens from another dimension have invaded your world. You can't see them, they can see you. Buckaroo's your only hope. Okay, so that's the summary. If you were looking at this poster, this is what you would think the movie was about. Not really. It's a piece of it, and it's kind of gets at that idea that you're trying to, hey, There's spaceships, so it must be science fiction. But you know, to describe the film as science fiction is, you know, it has some science fiction elements, but it's not a science fiction movie. As time went by, they did what's called a staggered release. They released the film across several months. It was actually in the theaters from August the 10th until December the 20th was the last time it was there. So it was a long time in theaters, but it was never in very many theaters at any single point in time. The average number of theaters was less than 100 across the entire nation. A lot of movies, when they premiered, would be at 1,800 theaters. And they were trying to retool the campaign along the way, but again, never really were able to create something that resonated with an audience to bring them in to the theater.
And there were network promos in the Olympics that summer.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the promos. And when you talk about the marketing, a very smart move was marketing at the conventions.
Yes.
I don't know if you're going to get to that or not, but at different conventions. I used to go to Chicago Comic-Con every year, every summer, and it was the biggest one after San Diego, the Comic-Con in the 80s. It was the second biggest one going on. And they would come there, they had a preview reel to show you, they gave you headbands, they gave you lapel pins, and I think maybe there was maybe the newsletter?
Stickers.
Stickers? I don't know if they had a newsletter yet or not.
Newsletter, it came out
If you signed
year
up,
year later.
Okay. But yeah, that was really smart, because I think that's one reason it was really on my radar as a fan. And then Cisco Niebuhr reviewed it, and Gene gave it a good thumbs up. And like I said, I still don't know how I found it 2 hours away, but I did. And I didn't think it was going to come to Evansville, but it finally did.
So throughout that, they, you know, struggled to market, couldn't find how to connect to an audience. Probably because that's how they wanted it. Richter says, we didn't want to make a straight genre film. We don't want to make something. We wanted to just make a good, solid film that was unique. After it left theaters, it was a bomb. It cost a little over $12 million to make. It made less than $6 million in theaters. It was released on video cassette in February. Video cassette, beta, the whole wide range of formats. And at that time, you know, video was just starting to pick up, become popular in the United States. You know, people actually had video cassette; they could make their own choices, and that's where the audiences really began to develop. It found its audiences. Rentals were really high, sales, then they started a lot of screenings and things like that.
Yeah,
but it was the word of mouth, not necessarily the marketing that happened in those cases.
Yeah, and I was in charge. I was working the book broker, and I knew exactly what this was. So I was like, "Well, can I get this?" And I would anybody who walked to the door was one of those things when I thrust it on them. I'm sure Tarantino was doing that out at his video store in California too. So, but anyway, it was just a lot of word of mouth on this film. Yes.
And I'll just touch on one more spot here, and then we'll open up some questions here. So you can imagine when they went to market this overseas, if you had trouble explaining it to American audiences, now you have to transliterate some of it, and market it to other areas. And that's where some really interesting marketing materials come in. There's a company called PSO, Producer Sales Organization, which was founded by Mark Damon, who was a former actor. There's a biography about him. I'm just going to throw a little trivia out there. His specialty was he takes movies, U.S. movies, and he takes them to other countries because he spoke like 7 or 8 languages. He lived in Europe for like 17 years. So he knew all the, you know, kind of the cultural things, and he would create a unique marketing campaign just for those countries. And one of the first ones was Germany. There's a lot of neat stuff from Germany, but you know, this was the poster, the primary poster that they released in Germany. And you can see that they went for a different look. It's more mysterious. You get this green glow of, well, hey, you know, what's going on here?
Or is it because they just, we don't know what the movie is. They give up, you know.
But you know, I think it far more, this is always one of my favorite of the posters because it's kind of like this unknown piece. They actually bring the same line over aliens from another planet have invaded the Earth, you can't, they use the capital, and it's kind of a nuance. In the U.S., they use just like a generic you, and they. Here, they use a capitalized, which means it's personal. So they can see you specifically, you cannot see them. Okay, and there's no hope of Buckaroo Banzai. They just say, you know, these aliens are here. So it's kind of like this mystery, a little bit unknown. Yeah. And if you imagine living if you imagine living in Germany, which was a divided country at that point in time, during the Cold War, and all the suspicions, and this is 1984, and so you have the George Orwell, all of this thing, communism right there next to, and you get this poster of, you know, they can see you, you can't see them, but they're living amongst you. They really tried to play on those aspects, and I didn't bring all the lobby cards, which is images that they promoted with, but the lobby cards, unlike the U.S., they show all these industrial complexes. So these broad scenes, and it does show up in the book, but these broad, like of Yo-Yo-Dyne with all of the technology going, or the early jet car test, or the rocket sled where Emilio Lizardo's doing. It shows you this broad picture of the technology, factories, industrialization, very German themes, very German connection, which is an example of how they kind of customized it. Came out in September of 1984, so almost concurrent with the U.S. And then you have this pretty unique one here from France, and this was about a year later, actually, and where this came from, who knows, okay? This is completely out of whack. Obviously, the Mad Max influence. This shows up on multiple versions. There's a door poster that's got a whole fleet of alien ships flying off to the side here. It's a great poster. I love this poster. But man, if I had seen this and said, "Oh, I want to see that movie," I might have been a little disappointed, right? And interestingly enough, however it was, the French wanted to promote the violent aspects. So their lobby cards, 6 of the 10 lobby cards show a gun being brandished in the picture. And you kind of look at the details of that. But like a Uzi or a full-on gun, multiples show Penny being like wrestled to the ground, or where she's tied up and being threatened by Lizardo. So they chose different images, somehow capturing this violent aspect, the gun aspect. It doesn't show up in the other ones for that particular audience. Other areas, they use some other campaigns. French and German were the most distinctive. There's some cool ones from Australia. Happy to show you those. Or some other pieces, but I think that's big stuff. Just open it up for some questions or comments. People want to share their thoughts. Go ahead.
I think that you two will be able to answer the question that I've had since probably the first time I saw this movie.
All right. Shoot.
Did the Electroids influence Lou Gossett Jr.'s makeup in Enemy Mine?
That's a great question.
Like, was there any carryover as far as crew?
I guess I've never looked up the crew on Enemy Mine. That is a good question. What year is Enemy Mine, though?
85.
85.
I want to say that part of that, I remember reading something about that, but I think they were trying to make it very distinctive for Enemy Mine, but the mouth has a real...
Yeah, like the mouth and the nose, and even like they replaced the lobster tail with like a sagittal crest, but otherwise the eyes, the nose, the mouth, it's all pretty much electrolyte.
Yeah.
I wish I could definitely tell you.
Observation.
But that's something we need to investigate, obviously. I wonder, I want to look and see the crews, if there's any crossover. There might be somebody here that might have an answer to that. I might have to check it out.
Look a little bit.
But yeah, no, good. That's a good point. And I thought of that too, and I saw something with Enemy Mine just recently. It crossed my mind. So, sorry, but no,
Oh,
I
you're
don't,
fine.
but, you know, I don't have a different answer, but that's, yeah, but no, that's true, very true. And what happens a lot in industry, secrets leak over, I think the special effects guys know each other's stuff, they go each other. Comic books, you know, when X-Men came out, Doom Patrol came out at the same time, and it's like, did somebody leak something, you know, the guy in a wheelchair leaking a bunch of misfits? You know, and so there's a good chance there was some, you know, leakage.
Yeah,
They
I
saw
mean,
that
I
and then they
You know, if maybe they were repurpose special effects from,
Is it Fox? Is anybody is Fox? I think, isn't it? I think. But it could be possible. You never know. I mean, but that's a good question. We will get on that.
Yeah. Other questions or just sharing your experience?
Everybody saw it. So how some of you, tell us how you saw it the first time?
Yeah.
Was it, you know, like on cable or VHS or?
Cable
I saw it in the movie.
or satellite, actually.
I think I first saw it on cable in the late 80s, but I heard about it first thanks to some coverage in Starlog magazine about the time it came out. I'm living in this small town in the middle of nowhere. I don't have a car. I don't have a way to even go 2 hours or however to a movie theater. So I remembered seeing stuff about it, and I got a copy of the novel.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
it showed up at our, like, local drugstore or whatever, someplace that had a paperback spinner rack.
Yep.
And I got that, and I'm like, well, this is crazy, but I kind of love it. And then I came down to Atlanta to go to school, stayed in Atlanta, and maybe 3 years later, somewhere around 87, is when I found it on cable, and I'm like, that film, I need to see this. And then, yeah, it was pretty much that from there. But I had that odd thing of I kind of came to the book first, because I couldn't get to the movie.
And actually, before I saw it on satellite, I read the Marvel comic adaptation before I saw the movie.
Yeah, and if you read the comic book adaptation, you saw some scene, major scene that's not in the film. It's now as an extra, or you watch.
You can watch it with it.
Yeah, or you can watch it with attached to the film. There's a whole pre-trial sequence that Jamie Lee Curtis shows up in. So, as the mother, she's Buckaroo mom. Yeah, it really had it's hard to imagine this day and age of 20 right now we live in that you couldn't find that film. When I said I went 2 hours out of my way, Terre Haute is a small town in Indiana. It's not. Evansville is like about the third biggest city in Indiana. So I was really scared that it wasn't going to get to Evansville. Because at the time, one of the main theaters was a mom and pop theater. They didn't want to book it. They didn't have to book it. So it was real dicey that we were going to get to see it. But I was prepped for it. Had the paperback book. I love the fact that as a cinema person too, all the Easter eggs I remember, it's got an Orson Welles connection to it. And I just love the fact. And I think I don't know how I knew this or forgot this or whatever, but you know who plays the president?
Yeah.
Tell me.
He's from Indiana Jones.
Ronald Lacey.
Ronald Lacey.
Ronald Lacey, he's like, he gets his face melted off at the end, right? I mean, he's one of,
Yeah.
he's one of the Germans.
Well, the makeup though, they were trying to make him look like Orson Welles.
Yeah,
When he's upside down, that's the look they were going for to kind of give him that Citizen Kane puffy.
Yeah, you know, he doesn't look anything like he does in Raiders. And see, I mean, I'm a big Orson Welles freak, so right away, I maybe I had the book. I don't know if I had the book before the movie, but in the paperback book, there's a memo from Orson that disclaims the whole idea that this was that he was responsible for the Electroids coming through on that day. So.
I'll throw one more. Yeah, go ahead.
Have you guys gotten a chance to give a book away, one of our prizes?
No.
I didn't know we were.
Oh, no, yeah.
It's inconsistent. Did you guys have somebody who's earned a book already, or can I ask a trivia question?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, you go for it.
I'm going to come up if you don't mind.
Okay, I didn't realize.
I'm sorry to interrupt, guys.
No.
I'm Darren, I'm the track director here.
Yeah.
Thank you. And guys, thank you so much, really appreciate you. Put a hand up, no screaming the answer. The Jedi that looks like Electroid for a prize. Anybody? Come on.
Oh my.
I see a hand, yes ma'am.
Darth Maul.
Nope.
Plo Koon.
No?
Come on, he kind of does.
I looked it up to double check, that's not the name I found.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Anybody? All right,
Get this up?
get this,
And
okay.
you can't give me the book.
All right.
I know you have another question, but
Yeah, that was what I,
I would say Plo Koon's got those eyes.
yeah.
I mean, he got the little thing going on.
But Kit's got the hands too.
Yeah.
Can you verify that he was inspired by Electroid? Either of you?
Who's that?
Kit Fisto.
I've not heard that.
He must have been. It looks.
I'm sure it was.
First thing I thought of.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna get a second book and I'm gonna give our people to try the book. So give me, so let these guys wrap it up.
All right. I'm gonna throw out, this is an Easter egg, another Easter egg. They love so many Easter eggs. I know there's Outer Limits fans here, right? You watch Architects of Fear, okay? And I've never read this in a book, but I'm sitting there watching Architects of Fear just a couple of years ago, and I'm like, the closing scene is the hunters from Buckaroo Banzai. You watch those scenes back to back, they even call each other Bubba, and you know, like, they're walking through the woods, what is that? Boom, let's shoot it. And the dog is there, they shoot down the ship, it's got aliens in it. That scene had to have been, you know, an inspiration, you know, taken out of the Architects of Fear, which is one of my favorite episodes of
I have one more question, it might be a little silly. But with you guys working the conventions, do you find a bigger number of fans that were of an age to enjoy the movie when it was released, or that saw it in like the early and mid 90s? And I ask because to me the early to mid 90s was like the heyday for being able to catch campy stuff that was maybe flying under the radar, and most of it was because of USA Up All Night.
Yeah.
You know, that's what introduced me to like Troma films and Buckaroo Banzai and all of the things that I love now as an adult.
Yeah. So I would say there's a couple of things that happen, and probably the way I would track it is, for those who don't know, World Watch One is the official newsletter of Buckaroo Banzai. It was created by 20th Century Fox in 1985, right after the movie. They had publicity funds left over, and if you wrote in, they would send you a copy of this incredible newsletter that the publicist group put together as fans, and it's got like extras, you know, behind the scenes stuff, it's got funny stuff, it's like the world of Buckaroo Banzai is real. You know, they integrate real life stories into this. So it went for a couple of years. There were 5 original issues and then a couple of extras. They're fantastic. You can get them online, Buckaroo Banzai FAQ, PDF. And then it went into hiatus because of the mailing costs. But they had a distribution of 9,000 people. Okay, that's in the immediate years. And what they were trying to do is if they could build a large enough interest, then they could fund the next movie. Didn't quite get there. But then that newsletter was resurrected in 2004 at the 20th anniversary. And it's been running pretty well since then. But it's all PDF, it's all electronic. So there's just a wealth of stuff in there. And you do see some profiles of those fans, I think. So you do have those hardcore people that saw it then. I've read several people who feel like casual fans of today really get it better than the hardcore back then because we're so used to seeing these types of complex stories and just you're thrown in the middle of it.
That mixes satire, mixes adventure, mixes all that's such a gumbo of different genres mixed in that a lot of the younger kids are so used to. Now, getting to your question, I think also, I basically there's just different eras of fanboys. In my city, the generation before me were 16mm collectors, and then the 80s is a glorious time for science fiction and fantasy in the 80s, and those fans are a little bit different than the ones in the 90s. I think I see different. There's the ones that love the monsters, the Hammer, and the horror film, the Universals. So.
And I think it took off because of its availability too. I mean you had this core group of people who were in high school, college age, who were sitting there watching it on cable television and late night shows and things like that. So.
we've gone over 2 o'clock, so if you guys are going to another panel, be sure that,
I got one question,
Sure.
real quick.
Yeah,
So, you can see the electrodes when you smell the stuff. What did the president see on the TV?
When he looks on the television, he sees John Parker as human.
yeah.
But he's not emitting the smell.
No,
He explains that, they actually do talk about that in the,
Yeah.
bizarrely, they talk about it in the book, that it somehow the residue ends up on the film, even in the camera. And, it's complex. I know it's complex, but there is an explanation for how they do photographs. It imprints, somehow it imprints on the.
she's being really tricky with that one question, isn't she? Because I was thinking, yeah,
You just
okay.
watched it.
Yeah, no, that's a good trivia.
If I hadn't already given you a book, you would have just earned a book. That's a good question.
So,
All right, well, thank you very much. And, if you got any more
yeah,
questions,
you guys go to Dwayne as a table, he's got all kinds of cool stuff there, and he'll answer if you all have more questions you got or observations. And I gotta run to another panel. Oh, no, I think mine's story started.